And
This is Dads Watching Sports. It's the show by dads who watch sports, for dads who watch sports, or just dads in general. Here are the dads with a plan for every hashtag dad life and sports fan, Kyle Castles and Michael Draper.
welcome in, everybody, to the latest episode of Dads Watching Sports. I'm Michael Draper. He is Kyle Castles, and it is Sunday, August the 15th, and we're going live across the Dads Watching Sports and Off the Ball Network on our platform. You can catch us on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, anything and everywhere in between. I think Kyle's even on TikTok. Kyle, have you been on your TikTok lately?
I dabble in the TikTok, but I don't post anything.
Oh, come on, man. That is there is such an opportunity there for content. I can only imagine what your TikToks would consist of.
Nobody wants to watch my TikToks. I'm boring.
Hey, man, you talk about all the time on this show that you are the talent.
I am the talent on the show. I have the knowledge. That doesn't mean I do stuff.
Oh man, you just put a phone around you with that cat in the background, and you're gonna be good to go on some TikTok. Plus, you got all your high school kids that you teach. They would be, I think they'd be impressed.
I got a few of them that are probably tuning in this week. New batch this year. I let a few classes know I got a podcast, and they were all sorts of like, "You got a podcast?" And they started listening to it in the middle of class. I had to tell them to put their phones away.
There we go, Mr. Castle's getting it done. I like it. It is episode 77. Kyle, we've got a busy show. You and I were talking before the show. It is a busy time, man. You took like a 24-hour trip down to Mississippi and back. I feel like every weekend you and I talk, we're like, man, we're just burning out of both ends this weekend and just got all kinds of stuff going on. But we got to keep the energy up, man. We've got a great show. You know, we've talked over the past couple of weeks. We talked SEC football in depth with a couple of guests. Last week, Jay Stevenson of the Locked On Buckeyes podcast.
You wish Jay Richardson.
Huh?
Nothing. Go ahead.
And talked all things Big Ten. And tonight, Kyle, we have two guests talking two different conferences, and we'll get into those here in just a second. The first that will be joining us covers the Texas Longhorns, which, as you know, come into SEC country. So we're very excited about that. And we're going to bring him on now. He is the former Yahoo NFL writer and a Hall of Fame voter, current contributor to orangebloods.com and rivals.com, covering the Texas Longhorns. That is Anwar Richardson. Anwar, welcome to Dad's Watching Sports. How are you? And thanks for joining us.
I just feel like I need a cat. You know, I mean, I didn't know that I had to bring my own props to this show. Oh, there it is.
There we go.
Yeah. Again, I was joking beforehand. Like most cats just hide under a bed for 8 hours. And I feel like cats are pretty useless, to be honest with you. But your cat seems to have a good use back there. It seems to be friendly, wants to be around you. It's not attacking you. I mean, you've done good for yourself.
Hey, that is the only being in my house where I'm the favorite. And I married the woman who owned the cat. It wasn't even my cat.
Yeah, no, you got to do that. And it's funny. You said something in the intro that was really funny. My kids, I have an 8.5-year-old and I have a 3-year-old. And my 8.5-year-old doesn't give a damn about anything I do, right? He doesn't. Sometimes I'll take him to practice. He's on his iPad, this and that. Earlier this year, he found out I was on YouTube, and my son thinks I am the best thing ever. Like he cares nothing about the Super Bowls that I've covered, the boxing matches, the NBA finals, this and that. He knows I'm on YouTube. And the fact that he knows I'm on YouTube, he's like, "Oh, Dad, I checked it, man. You know, you guys got a lot of subscribers." And he posts up to his own YouTube channel, has like 17 subscribers. So yes, I totally feel with your kids in your classroom all of a sudden knew you were alive, because I totally experienced that as a father.
Yep.
Absolutely. And we're on YouTube right now. So if he's checking us out, definitely go ahead and hit that subscribe button on Dad's Watching Sports, because we love to get new subscribers all the day. All right, Anwar. Well, thanks again for joining us. And we're looking forward to talking some Big 12 and Texas football with you. So what we've done over the past couple of weeks, as I mentioned in the intro, we've kind of gone through each conference, just talking a little bit about anything that kind of came out of media days, or just kind of what's coming up, or what's kind of the big talking topics. And I know we've got this huge looming thing of expansion, conference realignment, Texas coming to.
Don't step on my toes. That's my question.
I'm not going to step on your toes. I'm going to say that's going to tease, Kyle. We're going to get to that in just a second. But first off, just from media days itself, any big takeaways other than kind of the big elephant in the room of Oklahoma and Texas leaving?
You know how long ago media days seemed after the SEC announcement? You know, it's so anticlimactic. So I mean, Big 12 media days I kind of equated to, okay, if you had a concert that was like in the park and we knew the SEC was the headliner, where would Big 12 media days be in that lineup? And it's probably like that 3 o'clock act, maybe that 5 o'clock act. They're not the local act that probably goes on at like 1 or 2. But they're in like that 5 o'clock spot, right? Because you still got that ACC that's going to go after you. The Pac-12 is going to go after you. So they're kind of in that like, well, if you get there early and want to have a drink, you'll watch them. But we know who the headliner really is. And so, there wasn't a lot of huge takeaways, from Big 12 media days. Spencer Rattler from Oklahoma didn't go. And one of the reasons that Lincoln Riley explained that was just because – he's an underclassman per se. And so, they didn't want to have so he wanted to have more upperclassmen that was there. From a Texas perspective, Steve Sarkisian's first media day. I mean, probably hasn't had one since Washington, right. And had the opportunity to kind of be out in front and kind of talk about the expectations of the program. They brought Keandre Coburn and Bijan Robinson. Bijan Robinson's running back for University of Texas. Keandre Coburn is the defensive tackle. Bijan Robinson, because we all love offense, he's a guy that you would probably say you should know his name. If you look at the 3 out of the last 4 games, not only rushed for over 100 yards, I think he hit 170 in one of those games with about 10 touches. He's a guy that's got early and very, very minimal Heisman kind of, odds. But probably by next year, he'll be a name that everyone's talking about. You guys will know it now, and you guys will talk about it now and be so ahead of the curve that all your kids in your class will be like, man, he is such a smart dude. I think the biggest, takeaway was just, the one thing I would just say is that I've noticed that Steve Sarkisian, the head football coach, he doesn't really shy away from the expectations. He fully understands that at University of Texas, no coach is hired to be good. They're hired to be great. You could be good at other programs and that be acceptable. But at Texas, you're hired to be great. Tom Herman was a very good coach at the University of Texas. He won 4 straight bowl games. Last season, they finished 7-3 with 2 games that were canceled. One of the games that was canceled was versus Kansas. Another game was versus University of South Florida. If they play those games, they're probably a 9-win team. But you're hired to be great at the University of Texas. And I think Steve Sarkisian seems to understand that. He hasn't shied away from championship talks, the championship expectations that the fan base has. And he understands, like, hey, even though it's been since 2009 since Texas has actually won a Big 12 title, that doesn't stop Texas fans from believing that they should be in the Big 12 championship. And look, the other problem is Oklahoma's won 6 straight. Yeah. And Texas fans are looking at this thing as like Oklahoma's won 6 straight Big 12 titles. We need to be in that mix. Now, we'll get into a bigger conversation because I think Oklahoma should enter the season as a favorite. Iowa State is probably the second best team. And then you have the other teams that are fighting for, that kind of recognition after that. And Texas is one of those teams that's in the mix. But back to your original question, what my biggest takeaway? I just think that I've noticed that Steve Sarkisian is not shying away. Most coaches want to kind of downplay it and they want time, right? They all want time to institute their own program, get their own recruiting class in. Like, that's what they all want. And so Steve Sarkisian saying like, no, I understand that you guys want to win championships and I understand that's my job.
So you mentioned Sarkisian saying it's my job to win championships and a Big 12 title and all that. But let's talk about the elephant now. Texas, Oklahoma coming to the SEC. It's not just Oklahoma anymore. You got Alabama, Nick Saban's Alabama. Sark knows all about that, right? You got Kirby Smart's Georgia. You got Dan Mullen's Florida, right? You got Coach O's LSU. And I get that last year they weren't that, but you saw what they could do if they had the right guy pulling the trigger. You got Jimbo's Aggies over here in College Station. It doesn't get easier to win a conference championship, much less a national championship. Maybe it gets a little bit easier if we expand the playoffs, but conference championships don't get easier after this year, next year, whenever we actually pull the trigger and Texas and Oklahoma come over. So what does this conference realignment look like? And just talk to me right now about Texas and Oklahoma coming and playing. Hopefully this doesn't upset you too much, but coming and playing with the big boys.
Well, I mean, so there's two things with that. One, I think, I always say like two things can be true, right? I don't necessarily live in a world of absolutes. I totally agree with everything that you're saying. The SEC is the conference, right? I mean, we understand that is the big boy conference. I told you that's the headliner that goes into the show. And so you understand that the SEC, it is where it's at. Every year after the NFL draft, we see the numbers of SEC players that were drafted. And you're in the Big 12, you're like, oh, we ain't got that, And so from it helps the SEC programs from a recruiting perspective, because if you're a recruit and you guys we're older, so we understand every kid's not going to go pro. But these kids who are signing scholarships, they all believe at some point they're going to play in the NFL. And they're all looking for the program that they believe is going to get them into the NFL. So I 100% agree with everything that you're saying. It's Alabama has done a very good job. Florida has done a very good job. A&M is a program that's on the rise that some people think might be able to make the CFP. But then let's keep it the other part of it real. LSU, after you have a Heisman kind of winning kind of quarterback, LSU was a 5-win team. Mississippi wasn't really that great. Arkansas wasn't really that great. Missouri hasn't been that great. Kentucky's okay. They were 5-6. Tennessee is not that great. South Carolina is not that great. Vanderbilt's not that great. Mississippi State's not that great. So I get what we're saying, right? I'm not discounting the big dogs of this conference. I'm not discounting Alabama of this conference. I'm not discounting everybody else. But there's a lot of pretty average teams also. There's a lot of so-so teams. There's a lot of So, yes, can Texas go in and beat an Alabama and compete for a SEC title? No, not at all. I wouldn't even try to lie to you on that. Are they better than the Florida at this point? Not at all. I'm not convinced they're better than the Georgia at this point. I'm not even convinced they're better than A&M. But the other teams in this conference, I feel like Texas can be competitive against. I mean, I've seen Texas against Georgia in a bowl game, and people can act like Georgia didn't care, right? Because if they'd lose, they didn't care. If they won, they did care, right? So they lost because they didn't make the CFP, and so no one cared about it at that point. But I've seen Texas against Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. I've seen Texas, what did they play about 3 years ago? They played another SEC team a couple of years. Say it again.
Ole Miss in the Cotton Bowl.
Ole Miss or Arkansas, maybe.
It was. Hold on, I'm gonna look through it. In any case, they defeated that team. Texas fans are gonna be so pissed at me. They're like, dude, you can't remember. It was Missouri. Okay. They had a really good quarterback, and they beat Missouri in there. So, I think that Texas is good enough to compete against the non-top dogs. I think Texas can go in there and still be in that 8-win range within the SEC, and I don't think that's necessarily insult. Oklahoma is a team that I think goes in there and competes from day one. And here's my thing from Oklahoma, because I know I've heard it from SEC fans, and they'll say, well, Oklahoma, like they've got to get ready for big boy defense and big boy everything. But when you got to prepare, if you have a month to prepare for Oklahoma, yeah, sure, absolutely. You got a chance to figure them out. If you got 3 or 4 days to prepare for an Oklahoma team, I think that's totally different. I think only having 3 to 4 days, because we're talking about, hey, Sunday is going to be that film review day. Monday is going to be a little bit, but maybe that's a Monday is a day off, depending on the program. Maybe Tuesday is a day off, and you really hit it on Wednesday, right? Wednesday is when you really start hitting the ground running. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday walkthrough. Lincoln Riley's good. I think when you only have 3 or 4 days to prepare for a Lincoln Riley program, there's going to be some problems. So from a Texas perspective, I don't look at Texas and say, oh, they're going to go to the SEC and they're going to kick ass. I look at them and say, okay, they'll go to the SEC. They'll be one of the good teams that are in the SEC. But, until Nick Saban decides he wants to hand off the mantle, and until some of these other teams fall off, and then Texas has got to get better from a recruiting perspective to compete against those type of teams, because to your point, and you're not 100% wrong, Texas has struggled against TCUs of the world. Texas has struggled against Oklahoma States of the world. Texas has struggled against Baylor. Texas has struggled against Iowa State. So I get, it's easy to say, okay, look, dude, if you can't handle TCU, what are you going to do against some of these teams in the SEC? I 100% agree with you on that point. But I think once you get past the really great teams at SEC, there's just a lot of pretty good teams. And I think that's the mix that Texas can be in.
Well, and those SEC defenses aren't what they used to be either. Or maybe more of the offenses are better because, you look at, now, granted, Alabama last year was just on a completely different level, but they were hanging up 60, 50 consistently every single week. And some of the other teams in the league have been able to do that too. So those mighty SEC defenses have taken a step back. Or at least compared to the offenses over the last couple of years. But go ahead, Kyle.
It's a different world. It's a different world. The spread offenses have just made this into a different world where if your defense holds a team to below 28, you feel like, oh, you got a shot. That's just the world that you and we all grew up in as old school football players, where a team might hold someone to 10 points, 13 points. That if you can do that in the first quarter, you've done something amazing. You're not doing that nowadays, though. Not in today's spread offenses, and so that's why I think Oklahoma would be fine. I think Texas will be pretty good, and Texas has got Alabama already as I think they have them next year scheduled. They've had Alabama, Florida already on their future schedules. Arkansas is coming up this year. This it's interesting. Texas plays Arkansas this year in week 2, and when that game was announced, it says it's going to be on ESPN. I thought to myself, why? Who cares? Why is this a late night game? And now in my conspiracy theory mind, I'm like, oh, did you guys already know what was about to come down the pipe? Because there's no reason the 3-win Arkansas team should have ever been on an ESPN night game. And all of a sudden it kind of is. I'm like, okay, so this becomes a real introduction for Texas in the SEC when they go against an Arkansas team on the road. You guys know that's a hostile environment. Even though Arkansas wasn't good last year, it's still a very hostile environment to go into. And I'll be very interested to see how Texas responds when they get there.
Yeah, I think you hit the recruiting. I think is a big deal because A&M has been able to take that state of Texas and go, you can stay in state and go to Texas, or you can stay in state and come play in the SEC. And I'll get you in front of Alabama every year, in front of LSU, in front of whoever, and I think that's a big deal. So we've talked about the two big boys left in the Big 12. Now we got, you mentioned them, Oklahoma State, Iowa State, Kansas, K-State, TCU. Where are they left in 2025 at the latest?
I don't know. I'll be honest with you. As Biggie says, it's going to be a lot of slow slinging and a lot of flower bringing at this point. They're in trouble. That conference is in trouble, and that conference really relied on Oklahoma and Texas to carry it. Sure. And when Oklahoma and Texas are gone, especially when they have to do a new TV deal in a few years, there's not going to be TVs that they're going to say, we want to unload the Brinks truck and back it up so we can get Oklahoma State games or Baylor games or TCU games. Those programs are in trouble. And really, if you're part of that conference, if you're one of the remaining programs, you've got to find a way to survive. What Texas has been able to do, what Oklahoma's been able to do, is they've been able to set themselves up for the next 50 years, for the next 100 years, right? Going into SEC, that has set you up for 50 to 100 years. If you are West Virginia, if you got a chance to potentially go into the ACC, you're gone. Yeah. You jump on that in a heartbeat, and you just don't look back. In any other program, if you have an opportunity, if the Pac-12 wants to expand for some odd reason and they want to involve you in that mix, you jump on it, because outside of that, then what the Big 12 has to do and try to survive, they're going to have to try to add in other teams. And these other teams are going to have marquee names. So they can add in an SMU. They can try to add in a Houston. They can try to add in a Cincinnati, a UCF, a USF. They can try to add in that and try to get to 10, or try to even add in, to get to 12 to actually be the Big 12. But that being said, none of that's going to move the needle. It's not going to. You're not going to be moved by USF versus Oklahoma State. You're not going to be moved by UCF versus TCU. Like, these are Wednesday night games at best, and so I don't know what happens to this conference. I would say the programs who have a chance to bolt will jump onto something, and then everybody else is just going to have to hang on for dear life. Because to your point, they just don't have enough marquee names. Not to say they don't have good programs, but it's not a marquee name, and it's nothing appealing to any other conference. And even if you are another conference and you say, okay, we can add Texas Tech to our conference, what does that do for you? Or you're not really saying, like, the kids that Texas Tech goes after, those high 3 stars, does that really add anything to the Pac-12? Does that add anything to the Big Ten? Like, that's not what the kind of guys that they want, And so I think this program, the Big 12, is on life support at this moment, and they're just going to have to hope for some sort of miracle in order to pull them through. Because guys, I wouldn't be surprised if Oklahoma and Texas was in the SEC next year. I just don't. I can't see this being a lame duck situation for 3 more years. I don't see that working out for anybody. And if you're the Big 12, you want the money for certain, of course, but you've got to start thinking about, okay, outside of 3 years, where is our conference at 10 years, 20 years, 25 years? And you've got to start making moves in order to replace Texas and Oklahoma. And so I don't know what happens, but it's a great question. I won't be around to see it. I'll be with you guys.
Hey, but here's the thing. I think the other conference presidents, based on the anonymous source story I read earlier today, are going like, where are we going to be in the next 10, 15, 20? Because you got the Big Ten, the ACC, and the Pac-12 commissioners all meeting. They're not meeting, but they're meeting, but they're not talking about anything. But there's this idea of an alliance between the 3 starting to build.
Yes,
because they're looking.
Big 12 is outside of that alliance.
They're not in it. So they're already looking like, because Big 12's not here, we got to put something together because this SEC thing is a monster.
Yes, you're 100% correct.
So let's talk specifically about this year. You mentioned Iowa State earlier. It's kind of the maybe the number 2 team for the Big 12 heading into the year. Some people that's kind of their trendy pick for the playoff. What do you see from Iowa State, and are they a team that can make a push to the top 4?
I won't go playoff. That's asking a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not convinced they're better than Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma right now is a better team, than now. Spencer Rattler's a guy that's going to compete for the Heisman, and so, the one thing that you guys, I know you guys see it from afar, and I get a chance to see it up close up. Lincoln Riley is a really good coach. He's really good. He was a guy that was thrown in kind of at the last minute as a replacement for Stoops, and there were some questions. I had questions. I'll be honest with you. I didn't know if Lincoln Riley was going to be who he was and be the guy that's producing one great Heisman finalist / one early round pick after another. But the thing about Oklahoma that a lot of people don't realize is that they've gotten better on defense. They hired a defensive coordinator by the name of Alex Grinch, and that defense got a lot better last year. This will be year 2 for these guys in that defense. Because the thing that Oklahoma realized is that, to your point, they were going and getting to the CFP and then having to go in against the SEC program, and they were getting their asses tapped, right? That was not a good feeling. And they quickly realized, okay, we've got enough from an offensive standpoint to get through the Big 12. What we don't have once we get outside of the Big 12 is a good defense. And they've got a really good defensive coordinator. So for Iowa State, I don't think they're better than Oklahoma at this point. I think Matt Campbell's a really good coach. I think that, they've got everybody back, right? And so, I think they'll be really good, on both sides of the ball. And Matt Campbell's really good. I believe this is probably his last year at Iowa State, because after all these guys graduate, and I think the NFL is going to be calling him to the point where he just cannot ignore those phone calls anymore. And especially if you're Matt Campbell and you understand you're in a program that may not be in a major conference a few years from now, you've got to get out while the getting is good. So, I think Matt Campbell gives it everything he has. But at this point, I think Oklahoma is the team to beat. I think Iowa State is number 2, and I think Texas is that number 3 team. But I think Iowa State as a number 2 pick is asking a lot when you consider what Oklahoma has coming back, and consider, like, if you got a guy who's going to compete for a Heisman, I mean, you've got a chance to actually, potentially win it all. Oklahoma is just too good for me to even give Iowa State that kind of credit.
For sure. Absolutely. Well, Anwar, we'd love to talk football, and football only, because we could go into so many more questions and so much more content about the Big 12. But this is a show where it's called Dad's Watching Sports. We'd also like to talk a little bit about dad life. So we're going to switch gears really quickly before we let you go. So tell us about, you mentioned your 2 kids earlier on, but tell us just about kind of family life, and then kind of how sports has fit into all that, and your career and all that. Just tell us a little bit about what it's like for you guys.
So these are my 2 boys right here.
Nice.
The oldest here is as my hands are in there is Maximus. The youngest kid is Titan, 8.5, and 3. And yeah, thanks. Yeah. And it's I'll tell you a couple of different things that I'm really happy about. I saw this meme one time, and it said that my father was an alcoholic and that's why I drink. And the other sibling said my father was an alcoholic and that's why I don't drink, right? 2 different things. 2 things can happen to you. Something can happen to you can affect people 2 different ways. My father was never part of my life. Like, he just wasn't. I only connected to him when I was in my late 20s. But it's been so important to me to be an active part of my kids' lives because of what I didn't have, that I am super active. So I'm the YMCA coach, for them, or the basketball league for my son. My youngest son will come and tag along. So you got that, you too? These 2?
Oh, yeah. And I also work for the Y. So that's fantastic.
Yeah. So, YMCA basketball coach. And then, I enjoy that. And, the thing that I think, just being a father and being around and being active and everything like that, I love it. Like, I just love being a dad. But the thing I feel like I'm most proud of is that I was married to both of my son's mothers, and we've been divorced. But the thing that I'm most proud of is that I have an amazing relationship with both of them. I consider both of them very close friends. My oldest son's mom got remarried, and I really like him. We get along great. We've hung out. I've been to their house. We've had drinks, all those type of things, because I told him, look, you can do something for my son that I cannot do. And that is, you can show my son what it's like for his mother to be loved. Like, I can't do that for him. I can't provide that for him, but you can provide that for him. You can be that role model for him. You can show him what it's like for his mother to be loved, for his mother to get flowers, for his mother to get candies, for his mother to get taken on trips. You can be that a positive example. So I'm always so pro them and so loving on them. And both of my exes, all my exes live in Texas. They literally live 2 blocks from each other. We all have this amazing community where we go and hang out with each other. We talk to each other. We all do things together. One mom will take the kids on a trip to out of state. Another mom will take them for the weekend. And we have this amazing bond, which it seems crazy to people, right? They think we're odd and these weird unicorns. But the thing I'm proud of is, their successes, right? You're in your marriage and everything is going well. Like, that's amazing. And I compliment, and I honor all those people who are in these successful marriages that have the kids. But for those who've been divorced, sometimes it's a little challenging to make sure that you put all that aside for the children. So one of the things I'm really proud of is that both of them I love to this day. We hang out, we do things together. And so from a parenting standpoint, I think that's been one of the biggest achievements it's easy to love someone when you're with them, but to love that person's mother when you're not with them, because that's what the child needs and the children needs. I think that's been one of my best accomplishments.
That's awesome, man. Kudos to you and for them. That's fantastic.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's great stuff.
Thank you.
Do you have any, real quick stories that you funny, however this works, that involves being a dad and sports? I know you got it with your 8-year-old that maybe doesn't care about anything, but
he cares about Roblox. That's what he cares about. And it's weird. It's weird when you have kids because they have different. So my oldest is more quiet. He's into his games. My youngest, he is, I call him Titan. I mean, he is a Titan. And he's just, we went to one of these indoor kids places like a few months ago. And I haven't decided if I need to do a college fund or a bail bonds yet. I'm just got to figure it out. Because there was a kid there and he took a ball. My youngest son took a ball and threw it at a kid's head and it hit him in the head. And the kid was like, ow. And my youngest son was like, that made me happy. I'm like, oh, no, son, no. Don't be that kid. Don't be that kid. No, now I got to apologize to parents. But no, I don't. It's hard because you're asking for like funny stories, and I don't know. It just the kids, as like my youngest son runs around the house naked. I mean, he just doesn't like clothes.
Don't they all?
He just hates clothes, and he just sits there without any clothes on and just doesn't give a damn. My oldest son is a little bit different, but my youngest son he's more of the personality person. He's more of the jump off of the bed and try to beat you up. He's more of the kick you and have fun loving person. He chases my oldest son around with a sword. I mean, he not a real sword, by the way. It's a light up sword. I hide the real stuff. But no, they're just they're both for big blessings. My youngest son was my oldest son rather, Maximus. When he was conceived, they said he wasn't going to be a viable pregnancy. He was conceived 15 days outside of the ovulation cycle, and so they just thought that there's no way he would ever make it. And we kept going back every week, and there was no growth. And they said like, this is not going to work for you. And here we are 8.5 years later. So awesome. I'm, just happy. They're both big blessings to me. Very excited. One kid was born by C-section, my oldest. The other one was born in a tub in the house. I've seen it all.
There you go.
And that's why I got a vasectomy, because I never want to see it again.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious. All right, we got one last question. Again, thanks so much for your time.
No problem.
So we do brackets on this show from time to time. We've done best sports movie bracket. We've done best cereal bracket. We've done best sports venue bracket. We are going to be launching in the next couple of weeks the best tailgate food bracket. So if you had to pick the number one overall seed in our best tailgate food bracket, what would be your pick?
Give me another question. The hard part. The hard part about answering your question is this: like as like reporting, I never get to tailgate. I always got to go into the stadium. I've always got to do interviews. I don't get a chance to drink before games, unfortunately. And so what you're saying, like, it sounds great, but I haven't had a chance to participate in a lot of the atmosphere or the foods that you're talking about. If you give me another question, give me one that you did previously.
Okay,
that you remember. Maybe I can do that one.
Best sports movie.
Ooh.
Just for the record, 42 was voted on by us and all those that follow our show as the best sports movie. It beat out a few that probably should have won, but 42 was our choice.
42 is a great movie.
It is a great movie.
Don't get me started again.
Well, what was the one? There's the best one is one with what was it? The Chicago Bears.
Brian's Song.
Brian's Song is probably the best sports movie, right?
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't even get that one on the bracket because somebody over there couldn't.
That's a good one. That's actually my dad's favorite sports movie. So
yeah, I mean, like Brian's Song would be, because we can go like remember the Titans, right? But that's like
right.
That's like young people, right? I mean, that's but old school. I mean, I would. Brian's song would probably have to be the best one or which one of the Rockies would be pretty good? Because that's sports. I would say maybe either Rocky 2 or Rocky 3 would be pretty high up on the list.
Yeah. Any of them besides 5?
Oh, that was horrible.
Yeah. we won't even speak about that one.
Yeah. What, five was the one where he fought out in the alley, right?
Yeah.
Was that 5?
Tommy the Machine Gun.
Yeah, that was really. I mean, they semi-redeemed themselves with 6. Did much better with Creed,
right?
Because 6 they got Antonio Tarver in the movie, and it got better. But Creed is kind of when they kind of redeem themselves. You're like, all right, I can watch this again. I would say, you know what? I'd probably either go with Rocky 2 or 3. I think I would. Now I think about it, just not quite sure which one.
Yep. Well, those are all good choices. So Anwar, thanks again, man. We can't thank you enough for joining us and for all the insight on the Big 12 and dad life and all the above. But best of luck. Enjoy covering the Longhorns this year, and best of luck to you guys in the future.
Thank you for having me on. You guys have a great night. Appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, I don't even know how to end myself. You guys have to
You're all good. We'll take care of you. All right, we're going to go to a quick break. When we come back, we've got Andy Bitter. He is the Virginia Tech football beat writer for The Athletic. He's going to join us to talk ACC. So we got to switch real quick here, Kyle. Big 12 to ACC. We'll be right back after this quick break on Dad's Watching Sports. Big news in the Dad's Watching Sports podcasting world. You've heard us mention it on the show already. We are now part of the Off the Ball Podcast Network. We're super excited to be joining the team of great shows, hopefully adding a little dad flavor to the mix. You can check out Off the Ball Podcast and Off the Ball Network on all your social media sites. Just search Off the Ball Network. And while you're there, give them a like and a follow. You won't regret it. Welcome back into Dad's Watching Sports. Michael Draper, Kyle Castles, episode 77. We were just joined by Anwar Richardson. He works for orangebloods.com and rivals.com, covering the Texas Longhorns. A lot to talk about with expansion and moving around conferences and Big 12 media days and Steve Sarkisian and a lot going on there. And Kyle, there's also a lot going on in the ACC. And as we're going to shift gears really quickly to talk about ACC football. And so we've got Andy Bitter. He's going to join us. He's the Virginia Tech football beat writer for The Athletic. Andy, thanks so much for joining us and welcome to Dad's Watching Sports.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for being here. As we talk, we've kind of gone through the last couple of weeks with our show. We've highlighted the SEC. We've talked the Big 10. We just had Anwar on to talk the Big 12. And so we wanted to get some perspective on the ACC as well, as it's been just as dominant as any conference in college football, specifically with Clemson over the past couple of years. But you take the Hokies along with Florida State, Miami, all those teams that have had traditional football powers. So we definitely wanted to talk some ACC football with you, and thanks for doing that and joining us. So ACC Media Days, we've kind of been recapping this with everyone who's joined us, the media days that cover those different conferences. So any kind of takeaways from Media Day specifically, just some ahas or any kind of maybe something that wasn't necessarily coach speak that you kind of picked up on over the course of those days?
Not really. I was so focused on Virginia Tech, I didn't have a chance to really branch out so much with the other schools there. I feel like it almost feels like it's a fait accompli when you go to the ACC Media Days. It's like, well, Clemson's going to win it again. And you're like, can anybody get up there and be as good as Clemson? And you kind of sift through the teams and you're like, no, probably not. Like, and every year we talk ourselves into somebody that's going to do it. And this year it's like everybody's on North Carolina because of Sam Howell. And, if you have a great quarterback like that, you've got a chance probably. And the last time they played Clemson, they played them really close. So I think that kind of gives everybody that idea there. But I don't know. It just feels like it's become the same thing every year at the ACC Media Days, or at least before you had some variety, some different teams that win the conference. And now it's like, well, Clemson's going to win. Who's going to be the one to lose to them in the ACC title game? And it's been going on 5 or 6 years like that, it feels like.
Yeah. So that's kind of the way everybody looks at the ACC, and I agree. And that gets us really to the elephant in college athletics in the college athletics room is this conference realignment and expansion. The SEC has started it, going out and grabbing, two of the marquee names in college athletics in Oklahoma and Texas. As far as the ACC goes, have you heard any rumblings? What do ACC fans think about this SEC expansion into the Big 12 area?
Well, they fear that they're going to be even further left behind. They're already left behind in a certain extent. You look at all the Power 5 TV deals right now, and the ACC's is by far the worst. It's even worse than the Big 12s right now. The only thing that's keeping the ACC from being poached like the Big 12 did is the grant of rights deal that they had, and that goes through 2036. And I know Oklahoma and Texas are looking to get out of that by 2025. An extra 11 years might be a little bit more difficult to do legally to try to get out of something like that. So I think there's a lot of fear from ACC schools, like, 5 years from now, are they going to be making half of what the SEC and the Big Ten are in media rights? And, that's not to say that the ACC will ever surpass those conferences and how much it's getting paid. It just doesn't have the kind of schools that would draw that kind of media deal from ESPN or whoever wants to pony up the money. But you don't want to start 35, 40, $45 million in the hole. That's only going to widen the gap between the two. So, I think there is some nervousness, and I think there's a lot of people feel like they need to do something to keep up with the SEC and possibly renegotiate their TV deal. But short of adding Notre Dame to the conference, I don't quite know what you do. And honestly, I don't think Notre Dame's ever coming. So there's one out of this whole thing, and it's probably not happening. So it's a really tough spot for the league to be in.
I was in your position. I thought Notre Dame would never come, but the fact that Notre Dame made the jump for the one COVID year, I think you could see, especially if the Power 5 conferences decide they want to split, and you can talk to this if you'd like, split from the NCAA and say, we're going to do this on our own, or call it Power 4 because the Big 12's dead, right? The Power 4 decide they're going to split from the NCAA and say, we're going to do this our own way. Notre Dame, if you want to come with us, you got to be a part of one of us. Is that the only way that you can get the ACC can get Notre Dame involved?
I don't see that ever happening. I mean, that would require all the conferences to gang up on Notre Dame and say, you have to join one of the conferences. Well, 3 of the other conferences aren't going to get Notre Dame. So what are they benefiting from that? There's no reason for them to back Notre Dame into a corner. So
that's a great point.
I feel like Notre Dame, it got a taste of the ACC last year. And I think a lot of the fans are like, we can do without it. We're fine without it. I mean, they're already making that's the thing with Notre Dame is people always think, oh, they're making so much money on their TV deal. They're making less money on their TV deal than what they would be making in the ACC. They prize their independence. They really like it. It is what makes their identity. There's just something about that Notre Dame puts above all else. I just don't think they're going to compromise that to join a league if they don't have to. Now, the only thing I think that could make them join a league is if somehow their access to the playoff was cut off.
Sure.
And in this new expansion, when they go into 12 years, I think their access gets better. In the past, they would have to go undefeated to be in that top 4. There's really no ifs, ands, or buts about that. They couldn't afford to lose a game. Last year, they were in the ACC, so they actually could afford to lose a championship game. But if they're playing a 12-game schedule, they've got to run the table to be in the top 4. And now all of a sudden you're saying just be in the top 12. Notre Dame's in the top 12 all the time. They're going to be in the playoff almost every single year. So, I think Notre Dame is the one that would actually make ESPN open its eyes and go, okay, let's go to the table. Let's renegotiate this thing, ACC. And it's just not going to happen. And I don't think adding West Virginia or Cincinnati or, one of the Big 12 cast-offs does anything to your TV deal. I don't think it makes it better. So it's a really tough spot for the league to be in.
I agree. So coming out of the media days, we have the ACC media polls. And there's a lot that we could talk about there. I mean, it follows exactly what you said with Clemson at the top of the Atlantic, North Carolina at the top of the Coastal. I think Miami's going to be a lot closer to North Carolina than a lot of people think. I like Rhett Lashley down there on that offense, especially with the Eric King. But the one thing I took away from this, NC State got one vote to be the top team in the Atlantic Division. Now, was that you?
That was not me. I went chalk. I went with Clemson, North Carolina. I'm not a big believer in the Wolfpack necessarily. I look at their success last year, and it just kind of seemed like they missed all the toughest teams and beat the teams they were supposed to. So I'm maybe a little bearish on the Wolfpack being really that good this year. So I certainly did not give them the first place vote.
I just had to make sure because that made no sense to me. Speaking of Clemson, Mike's got a question.
Yeah, so Andy, you mentioned kind of the reoccurring question over the past couple of years is like, okay, who's going to knock off Clemson? And maybe it's not this year, but it seems like, with maybe some of the pieces that they lost, I mean, the obvious one being Trevor Lawrence, that maybe this is the year that somebody can kind of knock them down. If it sounds like North Carolina, based off of the way you voted, is the team. But is that the team that could catch them and knock them off this year? Is there somebody else? I mean, could it be Virginia Tech? Could it be Miami? Is there somebody else out there that could knock and dethrone Clemson this year?
Well, first of all, I think it'd have to be somebody in the Coastal Division.
Yeah.
Because you get that championship game opportunity. You have to be better than them for 60 minutes as opposed to being better than them for 3 or 4 months in the Atlantic Division. So I just don't think, over an 8-game span that anybody's going to be better in that half of the conference. I don't, you say this is the year they lose Trevor Lawrence and they back him up with DJ Uiagalelei, who's 5-star guy, was incredible when he went into the game last year. I mean, it's like, give us a break here. The rest of the ACC has to be like, come on now. You lose one superstar quarterback, you go straight to another one. But yeah, maybe they're vulnerable in a little sense. Some replacing Travis Etienne too at running back. Didn't exactly run the ball all that great last year. So I don't know. I mean, I'm finding like very nitpicky things about Clemson. But as for a team that can beat them, I mean, I feel like Clemson does its best on the big stage. Like it shows up for the ACC title game. That's always a blowout. When they lose, it's like they're almost bored. Mm-hmm. It's like they forget to show up against Pitt at home one game, or NC State one time where they almost lose in the last second field goal. It's like Syracuse. They lost at Syracuse. Kelly Bryant was playing hurt in that game. That was an extenuating circumstance there. So I don't know. It's tough to pick against a team that's that good when they get on that stage at that part of the season. I would have to go with North Carolina. Miami is interesting to me, but every time Miami has expectations, they don't really live up to them.
Yep.
Virginia Tech is like that too, but they don't really have the expectations this year, so maybe they can sneak up on some people. Who knows what Pitt? I mean, Pitt's got 12th year senior Kenny Pickett at quarterback. I mean, if ever there was going to be a chance for a quarterback who's experienced, and Pitt plays pretty good defense from time to time. I don't know. I think it's going to have to be a team that just catches Clemson on, with its guard down or something like that, and maybe it'd be a team you wouldn't expect.
Sure. Yep. Absolutely. Well, obviously, some news came out last week about the passing of Bobby Bowden, legendary coach at multiple schools, but most notably at Florida State. Virginia Tech fans are very familiar with him for multiple reasons, but the '99 championship game obviously comes into the forefront. So just from a Vautech fan standpoint, and someone who covers the team, what was that like? Just kind of, with the passing and really everybody just kind of remembering him over the past week or so.
Well, I've talked to Frank Beamer in the past about Bobby Bowden, and he was sort of the standard that they were trying to reach with their program. You go back to the late 80s. They played each other quite a bit when Frank first got there. And in fact, part of the reason he had his special teams philosophy, where you're playing your starters and your best players on special teams, is because that's how Florida State did it. And he saw how good they were and how effective they could be. So part of, the success that the Hokies had under Beamer on special teams was because of that. But I think Frank, I don't have the stats in front of me. I think he lost his first 6 or 7, maybe even 8 games against Bowden. Obviously, the 99 championship game was one of those. So it was always like that program they just couldn't get over the hump against.
Yep.
And I actually wrote the story the first time they beat them in 2006 2007, I think it was Tyrod Taylor's freshman year here, where Florida State was down a little bit, but it still sort of had that mystique about it, even if they weren't a great team. And that was a monumental win in Virginia Tech history to beat a Bobby Bowden team like that, even if it wasn't a vintage Bobby Bowden team. So I think that sort of legitimized Virginia Tech a bit within the ACC. And obviously the Hokies were very good in that early run once they got in there. But before they could beat Bobby Bowden's team, because they lost to them in the 2005 ACC championship, a game they were favored heavily going into that, and they still lost that game. It was kind of like, can you ever get over the hump against this team? They finally did. So I think it's, a reverence out of respect and just kind of how great that program was and the way they built it.
For sure.
So you mentioned Virginia Tech, and we know you're the beat writer for Virginia Tech, and so I got to ask. You kind of hinted at it. You said they may not be much, but what can we expect out of Virginia Tech other than having probably the best entrance onto the field in college football? When Enter Sandman comes on and that crowd goes crazy, it's impressive.
It is.
Yeah, it's going to be nice having it with fans again.
Yeah.
It was so depressing last year where it's like a couple hundred fans in a 60,000 seat stadium just jumping, and you're like, what is going on here? This is like some over the hill rock band where like 300 people showed up to the concert, and it's like it's just not the same. So they get that in a 64,000 capacity stadium will be really electric, I think, especially at the opener, because the entrance is even better at night. You're going to get a Friday night game against North Carolina to open up. I think it'll be a tremendous atmosphere. But as far as the team, it's a tough team to get a read on, because I look at the possible first team up and down the roster and I go, yeah, that can be a pretty good team. I could see 8-9 wins out of this team. I could see them challenging for the Coastal Division. And then I look at the second team and I go, man, they have to stay healthy. And there's some spots especially they have to stay healthy, like quarterback. Braxton Burmeister can't get hurt. It's not going to be a situation where a backup quarterback's going to come in and do well. Defensive line, especially at the end spots, they're getting a little thin there. Running back, kind of a question mark, following up Khalil Herbert there. Offensive line, if one of those veteran guys goes down, that could get sideways pretty quick. So, how often recently has Virginia Tech gone through a season without any injuries? It's been 4 or 5 years since that happened. So you almost kind of have to expect it. And that's why I go in with, a little cautious about how well I think this team will do. I think they'll win 7 games at least. And if it's a good season, they can go up a little bit on that. But I think it'll be better than last year's 5-6 record.
Yeah. Well, Justin Fuente, the head coach up there, I thought that was a home run hire when Tech made it. And I don't feel like it's just ever clicked. I mean, do the Hokie fans feel the same way, or are they just saying, we need to get him time? I don't know. What are they saying?
Yeah, it's a fan base that's frustrated. They're not used to this. They had their first losing record in 30 years last year. That's just not something that this program is used to. And like you said, I think when this hire was made, people writing like opuses about this is how you do it. This is how you replace a legend. Justin Fuente comes in that first year, wins the Coastal Division. He retains Bud Foster, the guy that a lot of people wanted to be the head coach. He keeps him as the defensive coordinator, and it didn't seem like there was any animus there. There's no friction on the team. They won the Coastal right away. You go, this is going to just take off, and then it didn't. And they struggled, and there was leadership void on the team, and the transfer portal hit them hard. And now everybody's squawking at each other, and it's the same old offense versus defense beef that you've had here at Virginia Tech for a really long time. Then Bud Foster retires, and it just has not gone to plan. So now here they are in year 6, and it feels like they're, I don't want to say at the start, but they're not as far along as people would have hoped. In year 6, you're not going, we're coming off a losing season, trying to see if Fuente is actually the guy that they want. So, it's a fan base that is on edge, and it feels like every game that they play is a referendum on Fuente, and that's not where you want to be as a program. Where if you lose one game, all of a sudden everybody's losing their minds. They want to fire him, and it felt like it came close last year. I mean, the athletic director had to come out after the season was over, basically have a press conference to say why he didn't fire Justin Fuente. that's not a healthy spot for the program to be in. So, we'll see if he can pull out of it. I like I said, I think this team could be pretty good this year, but some things go the wrong way, and all of a sudden you're around 500 again. And I think they have to have some serious thoughts after the season about whether he's the guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm with Kyle. I mean, and what sounds like a majority of the fan base and really across the country, I thought it was a home run hire. And it's still, who knows? It still might end up being that way, but definitely been interesting to see some of the just not maybe living up to full expectations there. Well, Andy, we could talk football all night long and keep you on here for another couple hours and talk ACC and SEC and all the above, and or Inner Sandman and just what that's actually like. But this is Dad's Watching Sports. We like to shift gears a little bit and talk about family life as well. So just tell us a little bit about your family life and kind of maybe specifically how covering the Hokies or just sports in general fits into all that.
Well, I have a 5-year-old daughter, Emily. She just started kindergarten last week.
Oh, nice.
So it kind of made me misty-eyed a little bit to see her get on the bus like that. But she has been around sports the whole time. I mentioned Fuente. He had been on the job only 4 months when my daughter was born, and I had tweeted a picture when she was born, and he sent me a DM congratulating me. This guy doesn't know me at all, so it's like, okay, that's a pretty nice way to humanize the head football coach there. But she's been around football. She's not like a big football fan. She had trouble describing what I used to do for a living before. Just be like, what does Dad do? And she goes, he covers up the football team. I'm like, no, you're adding an extra word in here that makes it sound nefarious, like I'm part of some sort of plot to keep things from coming out. So we've since corrected that. But yeah, she enjoys it. She's been to a game before. I took her to a press conference when she was like 6 months old because my wife was not feeling well that day. So I just had to take her. And she was quiet most of the time. Then she kind of acted up, so I had to get out of the room there. But she's been around it a little bit, but I don't think she's this huge football fan. Maybe it'll seep into her veins after a while, and she'll just do it naturally.
Yeah, we both have kids around the same age. Kyle's got a 6 and a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old, and I've got a 5 or almost 5, should be 5 in 2 weeks, and a 3-year-old. And it's funny, we talk about this on our show all the time. Like we've got these, you try to. You sit down with your kids to watch a game, or you talk about your teams, and you're like, oh yeah, like they're just gonna pick up on it. They're gonna be a big fan. They're gonna ask all the great questions and know all this stuff. And especially with the girls.
Well, I'm from Minnesota originally, so I'm a Vikings fan. And before that NFC title game a couple years ago against the Eagles, I had the shirt on, and she made like little Vikings banners and stuff like that. And I think she was 2 at the time. And I got her to say, go Vikings on a video. And then they went out and lost like 40-7 or something like that. I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like such a terrible parent. I've inflicted this horrible fandom on my child. I guess it's sort of the disease of being a Minnesota fan.
I named my 6-year-old Wrigley, so he's in trouble.
Well, there you go. But you got a World Series title under that.
We did. He was 2 when that happened. So at least
still counts. Happened in his lifetime.
That's right. Oh, my 3-year-old son, he's 2. He'll be 3 in January. He the day he was born, I'm a University of Kentucky fan, and the day he was born, Kentucky played basketball. I think it was like maybe against Alabama, and they lost. And I looked at him, he'd just been born. I was like, son, just get used to it. You're gonna love the great moments, but they're also gonna break your heart. Like it's just a matter of time. It'll happen on the football field, the basketball court, any way around it. It definitely happens. So
well, we were up in Minnesota on vacation this summer. We went to a Twins game, and that was the first professional baseball game she had been to, and we're going to it. I'm like, she's gonna make it through 4 innings tops. Like this is just not gonna last, and she made it through 8 innings. And I thought she probably could have gone more if we had stayed there a little bit longer. So I was impressed by that. We had to bribe her with a lot of food, but we did make it through 8 innings there.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. Kyle, I know you got kind of one more question, and then I'll wrap up with the tailgate.
All right. So you mentioned taking your daughter, your 6 months old, to a press conference, but how do we're all looking for this balance, right? We call it the work-life balance, but we actually had dad in there because being a dad it's a special place a special place we have to fit into. So how do you balance that work life and dad ratio or whatever?
Oddly, as a sports writer, I think it's easier because we just have such weird hours that
Sure.
I can be there for a lot of stuff that a lot of other parents would otherwise be at work at. And there are weekends in the fall where I can't make a lot of stuff, but then January through June, when she's doing dance class on Saturday morning, I'm there every week. But I always did daycare drop off and daycare pickup just because my schedule allowed it. So I get to go in and I get to talk to the teacher and see how she's doing and all sorts of stuff like that. So I felt very connected to her the whole time doing that kind of stuff. And like I said, I could take her to some interviews and I could probably do that now if she has to stay out of school, if there's a teacher work day or something like that. I might need to bring the iPad so she could entertain herself while we're doing the interviews. But I feel like the job affords you the ability to do that. Maybe if I was a Major League Baseball writer or something like that, where you're on the road for, 80, 100 days a year, that becomes a lot tougher. But as a college football writer, it's 12 Saturdays a year, and a lot of them are at home, and you really don't miss as much stuff as I think people might do. So thanks. So, I've enjoyed it, and I think it works really well with my schedule, and it's allowed us to bond very closely.
Well, we look forward to the ESPN highlight one day when she's asking a question in the press conference, and gets all the national media attention, asking that hard-hitting question. I'm sure that will be you'll be a proud dad when that happens.
She might. Yeah, I'll have to get her in there. Maybe I should bring her in and have her ask. Fuente's a tough guy to get answers out of on certain things. Maybe if like an adorable 5-year-old is the one asking the questions, he won't be able to. He's got 3 daughters, so I think that might be a soft spot for him. That might be a good plan of attack.
Absolutely, without a doubt. All right, we got one last question for you. And you may have heard us ask this to our previous guest earlier, but we do these brackets from time to time, and we've got a bracket coming up that we're going to launch here in a couple of weeks, the best tailgate food bracket. So if you had to say, hey, here would be my number 1 overall seed in a tailgating food bracket, what would be your choice?
I heard Anwar's answer, and I'm sort of in the same boat where I don't tailgate a whole lot, so it's tough. I will say I went to Wisconsin for school, Madison, and so I'm like familiar with the Wisconsin tailgating lifestyle. And the emphasis on brats is just such a great thing. I mean, you walk through the lots and you just smell them being grilled up, some peppers with it and stuff like that. I just feel like that is just like the ultimate tailgating food. When I think of tailgating, that's what I think of, not the tons of sides that go with it and stuff like that. It's like somebody grilling some meat. Hamburgers are plain like that. Give me some bratwurst or sausages or something like that. I think that's what I'd go with.
Oh man, that is a good call. I love a good brat, and like you said, with like some peppers and stuff on the side. Oh yeah, that's good stuff. Well, Andy, again, and thanks so much for joining us, and thanks for hanging on. I know we ran a little over with Anwar, so thanks for hanging with us, and look forward to seeing what Virginia Tech does this year and following you along on the Athletic as you cover them throughout the season. So thanks again for joining us.
All right. Thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely. All right, Kyle, we're going to go to a quick break. When we come back, we will talk a little bit more, and we'll close out the show. We'll be right back on Dad's Watching Sports.
All right.
Coming up next week on Dad's Watching Sports, it is episode 78, and we get to the final preview of the Power 5 conferences in college football, as we will talk all things the Conference of Champions, the Pac-12, and we'll have some guests to do that with. That's all next week, plus some dad talk on Dad's Watching Sports. We'll see you then, August 22nd. Welcome back to Dad's Watching Sports. He's Kyle Castles. I'm Michael Draper, and we are the Dads Who Watch Sports. Special thanks to both of our guests this week, Andy Bitter, again, the Virginia Tech football beat writer for The Athletic, and Anwar Richardson, who's a contributor to orangebloods.com and rivals.com, covering the Texas Longhorns. 2 great guests, 2 great conferences. And Kyle, we've got the Conference of Champions next week, or so-called.
The SEC?
Well, apparently the self-proclaimed Conference of Champions is the Pac-12. So we're going to have them next week. And Kyle, I'm going to put it out there, putting ourselves out there a little bit here. We do not yet have a guest from the Pac-12. I've reached out to, I think 1 or 2 and haven't gotten a response yet. I don't know why, because everybody would love to join our show. But if you are a parent, you could be a dad or a mom, and you cover the Pac-12, we would love to talk to you on our show next week. So hit me up. I am at JM_Draper on Twitter, and we can get you on to talk some Pac-12 football and mom or dad life. If you're checking us out on the podcast, rate, review, subscribe. You know the drill. And Kyle, you can check us out on Facebook, the Twitter, and even the Gram.
The Gram.
Maybe one day the TikTok as well. Kyle, a couple quick things before we get out of here. I had to tell you this because I think it's so funny. We talk about, like, I think we've talked about on the show before, like just weird fears or just like fears that our kids go through, and like how do we handle that, and how do we try to get them to move past it or to tackle that head on or whatever that needs to look like. So I guess it's maybe a week or 2 ago, and I'm going to call out my wife on this because she has admitted that she's the one that planted this seed. I think her and our daughter, Emma, were talking about like school, and like, you go through kindergarten and elementary school and then middle school and then high school. And I think Emma said something like, well, what's after high school? And she said, well, that's college. And that's where you go somewhere and you leave mommy and daddy and you go to school somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And now almost every single night before we go to bed, she's like, Daddy, I don't want to go to college and leave and not be with you and mommy. And so Emma and I, no joke, had about a 15-minute conversation last night about her having to leave us to go to college. And I'm like, sweetie, first off, you got like 14 years before this is going to happen. So you got a long time. Second off, your tune is going to drastically change over those 14 years, where you're not going to be sad that you're leaving mommy and daddy. You're going to be thanking the good Lord that you get to get out of the house probably. So I told her, I said, the next time you bring this up, I'm going to pull out my phone and we're going to record this conversation. So then when you are 18 and you're so ready to go and be like, well, no, remember when you were 4, you were so sweet and you just wanted to stay with mommy and daddy forever.
Yep.
The fear is so much so, Kyle. So my sister-in-law, teaches at Lipscomb University, teaches like pre-law at Lipscomb University. And we were talking about this because we saw them this weekend. And Emma goes, will Aunt Claire still be the college teacher when I go to college? Like, so basically like, so I know somebody that's at college.
Yeah.
But you just have these weird things that just kind of come up. Like they hear one thing and then it becomes like this whole different thing.
Yeah. So, I think you know this about me. Most people know me know this. I'm not a fan of snakes.
Right. And
somehow my boys have figured out that snakes are worth being afraid of. Right.
Yep.
And I ended up, it was I guess it was summer last year. It was during the whole lockdown. They were about to go outside and there was probably a 3 to 4 foot rat snake in our sunroom. And the dogs were going crazy. And so we all run to the door. What are they barking at? And there's this snake. And I went and got my shovel. And the minute the snake was you've been in my sunroom, right? It's got the screen windows. The snake was trying to climb up the windows. It fell. I was like, it's done. It's time. And I took the shovel and cut the snake's head off, right? That's what you do.
That's what you do.
They're terrified to go outside in the backyard sometimes now. They think there's a snake. I've had to tell them, no, that was the only snake in Tennessee and Daddy killed it.
Yeah. Good luck with that.
I didn't tell them I've had to kill another one just this past spring.
Yeah. Never go camping with them.
So yeah, I mean, they latch on to things. Wrigley, he's a weird kid and he still tells mama he's 6 and telling mama he's never going to leave. He's going to live with us forever. He's going to get married and him and his wife are going to live with us and he's going to give mama his kids. And she's like, yeah, we'll talk to your wife.
Yeah. I think Mrs. Wrigley might have something to say about that for sure. But man, it's just so funny how these little things just like, and I know we did that as a kid too, but these little things just blow up. And I'm just sitting there thinking like, sweetie, college is in 14 years and you are going to be dying to get out of our house by that time. And so it's just so funny. And she's so worried about it. She's like, I don't want to go to the big school where I have to move away. I'm like, sweetie, come on. Like, it's fine. It's fine. All right, Kyle, it's been a good week, good show, and I've got to give a quick shout out before we head out. So the Tupelo 49ers, they are the American Legion baseball program out of our hometown, Tupelo, Mississippi. Kyle, they are in the American Legion World Series going on, and I think it's called Shelby, North Carolina. Right now, as we speak, they are 2-1. They lost their first game. They've won 2 since. So in the semifinals of group play, starting on Monday night, I think it's Monday or Tuesday. So McKinley Holland, buddy, very proud of you. Congratulations on what you've done so far. They're like right there on the cusp of making this. I think like every year, like it's a great program that they built there. And so Mac and the 49ers, go get the ship and bring it back to the SIP.
Yeah, so I was actually in Mississippi, and my mom's birthday was Friday, so we drove down and hung out with her for the weekend. And
happy birthday, Donna!
I actually read my parents still get the newspaper, so I opened it up and I actually read a quick little article about it because I saw Mac's picture right there next to the article, and apparently he was an assistant coach on the team the last time they made it to the American Legion World Series. So it's all coming full circle for him.
Absolutely,
I'm glad for McKinley.
Absolutely. Well, good luck the rest of the way. I hope when we are recording this next week, we get to say congratulations to the American Legion World Series champions. And Miss Donna, you are always welcome. Happy birthday. I hope your baby boy spoiled you and treated you well for your birthday. But Kyle, we got to get out of here. It's been a great one. I will see you next week, my friend. This has been Dad's Watching Sports. We will see you next week. Y'all take care.